And let's start. I think there's one more person coming or planning to come. Let's see when they turn up. So welcome to this work talk on time for a truce, ending box warfare. It's born out of our necessity to birth possibility mediation and to look at it from the different angles of what are the key distinctions, what are the necessities in a mediation session, where the key is to increase the level of responsibility and enable other ways than being in conflict. And it's a specialty of possibilitator training that we're branching out at this time. So there'll be a training coming, and if you're interested, stay in touch, let us know. I'm really glad to be here because there's so much juice in this topic of conflict between boxes, box warfare, and what is truce, and how do we, where does truce actually lead us? And do you know, you've met me before. Have you all met Julyan before? Do you need to know anything about us before we go in? You want to say something about it? Do you all know Julyan?
Yes.
I don't know Joe.
You don't
I'd
know
like
Joe.
to hear a little from you, Julyan.
Okay. So I live in England, and I've been doing conflict transformation work for about 2.5 years on and off. And I'm inspired by coming back to connection and the possibilities of actually going through conflict, what it can do, how it can transform us and our relationships, and supporting people to go through that.
And
where are you, Joe?
Thank you. I'm in Auckland in New Zealand.
Hi, Teresa. Okay, let's dive in. Teresa, you're just in time. We're starting to dive in. So,
can you say a few sentences to the specialty of possibility mediation?
Yes, it's rather new, and it's not new. So there were first mediation sessions, late 90s or something, before I was in this context. And I think it was a couple of years ago, that I wrote into the trainer path, the possibilitator trainer path, hey, my background is that I used to be a lawyer, and I don't see that law really navigates to taking more responsibility. Instead, the legal system is such that most people just try to find to be right, and being right is a shadow. And then you go to a judge, and the judge tells you, okay, this is right and this is wrong, and you win and you lose, and this is how you pay. So out of that pain, I said, well, doesn't anybody have any experience about doing it differently? And Clinton said, what you're looking for is possibility mediation. Will you hold space for that? And so that's my journey to discover that in myself. How does it really go? And to hold space for that. And there are possibility mediators doing that, like Ana Norambuena in New Zealand, and myself. I've started to offer those sessions. Julyan has come on board, and it's really about this. It's for any constellation, so it can be an intimate relationship, but it can also be group settings in organizations, work relationships, where there's a conflict and the parties are willing to try something radically different. So the purpose is to navigate to a different outcome in the context of possibility management. So the possibility mediation there sits with possibility coaching, for example, where you could identify emotional healing processes in a mediation session, and then the parties go and have the emotional healing processes. And in the mediation session, it's more about, in that very moment, navigating to more responsibility so that the conflict can be transformed. And that really brings us to the question, what is a conflict and how does that go? And can you say something about the 3 phases of conflict transformation, Julyan?
Yes. So we've been discovering in this area around mediation that there's something called the 3 phases of conflict. And we have these 3 phases of healing, which is something that already exists in possibility management. And the 3 phases of conflict is very similar. It's that in our modern culture, they think about conflict in terms of 2 phases, i.e. there's a conflict and we need to get rid of it. In the same way as when you're ill and then you need to get rid of the illness. You want to get rid of it as quickly as possible. And you don't see the potential or the transformation that is possible in the illness. And the same thing is true of conflict, where the conflict can be the opportunity for the next version of your game world to appear. The conflict can take your relationship into this meltdown, into liquid state, and then the next version can come along. And it's by treating it not just as these 2 phases, but as 3 phases, that something else is possible. And our work as mediators isn't to make the conflict go away. It's about taking the conflict away from the people. So supporting them to evolve so that the conflict isn't there anymore, because they're taking responsibility for the things that lead them to be in conflict.
Yeah, so the distinction is, instead of trying to make the conflict go away, you're removing yourself from the conflict by transforming and evolving. That's the phase 3. And then essentially conflict transformation serves evolution. The conflict serves evolution. And were you finished, Julyan?
No, go for it.
So then the question is how does that go? Conflict for evolution. And that's where the truce comes in. You know, a conflict, what is a conflict essentially? It's what we're here to discover together is there's warfare, and war conflict happens between boxes and gremlins. So the box has these rigid beliefs and stories and expectations and assumptions of someone else, and they're not fulfilled. And then we have different beliefs, so we need to fight about those beliefs. And gremlins are used for the fighting, to defend those positions. And in a war, truce, what is truce? Truce is an agreement to stop the fighting. But we had this conversation and it turned out truce is not for peace, because it's more a pause in the fighting with the purpose of going back to the fighting. And in between you negotiate a bit to end the war, but peace is actually not the purpose, because the purpose is to stop, to make a bracket, to have a breath. It's like between moments, there are gaps between moments, and then truce is actually a gap between the fighting. And obviously then it is also a doorway. It is a doorway to exit the fighting sideways. And then as a doorway for bright principles to come through, for example. You can only hear each other if you stop the fighting, and even if it's for this tiny fraction of a moment. So truce as a doorway for bright principles to really work their way, to create connection, authenticity, integrity. And the outcome might not be peace. The outcome might be that you decide to not collaborate anymore in a case of collaborators having a conflict. But it creates this clarity, and then clarity can come through the truce, through the pause of the fighting, the stop of the fighting. That's what we want to explore here is, okay, so what becomes possible when we start with a truce? In any war, when people stop fighting. I think there's this, actually, what comes to me is this story about, I think, world wars where they would, when the British were involved, they would stop at 5 p.m. for their evening tea or something, afternoon tea. have their cup of tea, and then afterwards go shooting each other, which is crazy, right?
There's also the story about Christmas, First World War.
That was it. Yeah.
England and France, and then they celebrated Christmas together on Christmas Eve. Yeah.
And then afterwards they continue shooting.
They continue shooting. Yes.
Yeah. So it makes it obvious that the purpose of truce, like peace, it's just really questionable purpose of a truce anyway. I mean, Second World War, there was peace, and then people came back for the Second World War, and peace on a global level is pretty much an illusion. And also there's this peace as harmony fantasy. So peace as harmony just kills the possibility for people to stand in their conscious anger, which you need to create any sort of relationship, because you need to be able to hold agreements, you need to be able to say what you want, you need to be able to say what you don't want, to make boundaries, to make proposals, to follow through with your commitment. All these qualities, they don't always look nice. It's not always nice to say no. And peace has this smearing over quality. So we're here on the presumption that truce does not serve peace. Truce serves bright principles and evolution especially. And from there, then connection, authenticity, authentic relating, radical relating becomes possible. Anything from anybody about that? What you notice maybe in conflicts that you've had, or what is maybe also my curiosity is what are conflict situations that you're aware of in your life that interest you, that bring you here? Is it more intimate relationship conflicts? Is it organizational? Is it something you've observed?
It's really interesting that you talk about peace when it's seen as harmony kills the ability for someone to have their anger. This is something that I experience. I live in a house so I have an intimate relationship which has had a lot of box warfare, and at the moment there's a bit of a peace happening, but it's a harmony peace. It's not. So I feel like my anger, I have to suppress my anger. I can't be myself, and I then slip into my child. And this actually came to me last night, and while I was sleeping. So so I'm really interested to I'm really interested in the topic, and I'm really here to learn more and discover more today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
There's a way that the piece that you're experiencing is this box piece of enmeshment or codependency that keeps everyone peaceful and safe and in harmony, but stops evolution from happening. Stops you going through the door of the true truce that would allow something else to emerge.
Thank you.
I'm starting to get in some kind of relationship with a woman right now, and I can sense my typical behavior of having more shared time, wanting more time, having more of it. And I can also sense how this is some kind of typical behavior for me to get the love or the connection or the Aufmerksamkeit. What is it?
Attention.
The attention from outside and not from myself. And and I'm in some kind of conflict here also. And this is like she's not. She doesn't get hooked from my old behaviors and my old boxes, and she has more. She doesn't get hooked there, and so I just sense and these days and realize how this all typical behavior is then when it doesn't get served, I also get the impulse of, okay, then it's not my relationship, then I will go, instead of going through that transformation, which feels quite painful these days. And this is who I am.
Thank you, Benedict.
I have this topic that sometimes I'm an invitation for gremlins who, I don't know, I do something, I think I'm in low tremor, and sometimes I don't know. So wait. I want to know which kind of conflicts are helpful, and where it nourishes me, and where it's something inside where I can learn something from, and which kind of conflicts are like Kremlin attacks.
You want to know the distinction between conflicts that
No. That's what I discover.
you discover that there's a difference for you.
Yeah.
What have you discovered, Teresa?
I haven't. Yeah, I'm not sure, because I just learn how to stay centered and feel the difference between these two. So I think what I have discovered is that I have to stay centered to learn something.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Thank you.
For me, I've been holding space and coaching somebody that and she went through this situation. So for me, this is, I guess I would like to ask for possibility around the responsibility that I feel around working with this particular person. And she has grown a lot in her own conscious anger. She's grown a lot in many, many aspects of distinctions. And a very good friend of hers wanted something that she didn't. Anyway, they didn't agree. And what happened was that now the person has ghosted her, right? So she's wanting to have this conversation. She's wanting to come in to the table. She's wanting to have mediation, for example, and then that person does not want to. So I wonder what that looks like, and if you have discovered any possibilities around how to get the parties to the table.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. It's a great question, and I don't have the answer. I have ideas or, possibilities. If I start with you, Michelle, for one thing, that the first thing that comes up for me is you cannot force anyone to become a party to a mediation session. Because if they come out of motives that they can't own, they're not actually interested in the transformation. They're not actually interested in changing that, because people love having problems, and then someone ghosting someone, their gremlin must love that. They must love shutting people out of their lives and feeling righteous about it, or being righteous about, or this spreading energy in other parts of their life rather than addressing the issue straight with the person involved. That's often, it's my experience also from the other end of teenager ending a friendship and then just not talking to the other person anymore. So what happens is, naturally, is then I would have gone around and tried to defend my position with other people that weren't involved in the situation to make sure that I'm right, feel good about myself for doing that, because it affects people to end a friendship and not, or some sort of relationship and not do it in a clean way. So that's my first thing that comes, is that you cannot force anybody to be part of that, and you can only make offers. So how do you make an offer that is interesting enough that that person's being actually wants to come? So it needs to be about the possibilities that they could get out of that. And I think what people mostly aren't aware of is how much conflict that isn't addressed, that remains in the shadow world, that remains in the gremlin stage, contaminates their own life. And it binds resources, it binds energy that then isn't available for other things, for doing the interesting stuff.
Thank you for that.
I'm imagining a vacuum conversation that you could have with the person, where you create this vacuum and you really ask them what's stopping them, being on their side and saying, I want the best for you, I want to be with you in this, and really asking them to look inside and see what is it that's actually blocking them, because most likely it's one of their box's fears. And if you're in a context where they're going to know about that, then they can learn and see that.
So what I heard is to coach the person that I'm coaching to have that conversation with her friend, a vacuum conversation with her friend, because nothing else has worked, right? She apologized. She said, I'm sorry, maybe I spoke too rash. She was setting boundaries, saying what she wanted. And in her words, it went too far. Do you see? They're in that game, and now she got ghosted. So what you're saying, Julyan, is to offer that possibility for her to send that message and kind of try that.
Yeah, I was imagining it more as the mediator might do that, but
yeah, I don't
that's
know
totally
her.
something that, yeah, that's totally something that she could try. Yeah.
Well, another thing for that person, what's interesting is why, like, what's the necessity of your client really? And if you cannot force someone else to come to the table and have a conversation, or to really look at the core issues, you can always do it for yourself. That it's the only place you can change is in yourself anyway. If she goes, if her necessities out of the comes from the place of, I need to change the other person so that we have a real truce or a real authentic connection possible, but I want it so that the other person changes, then that's not going to work anyway. So you might as well start with her, and what you're most likely that you're doing that, is this holding space for her to take the issues that surface as fuel for her own evolution.
Yes.
And to look at what's really underneath and what else would be possible for her.
Yes, and then also communicating this to the ghosting one. So not only trying to give box reasons, okay, maybe I was too harsh, but what is her real need, from her heart, her intention to keep that friendship going, and to be truth here.
Yeah, a big part of her sadness now has been, like I said, in this ghosting, is that she was very authentic in the message. I love you. I miss you. I want our friendship. She's done that. And this additional piece about being authentic in telling her, not only for her, but in sharing with her friend, what is mine. I'm working on what my need is that you respond to me. Is also taking it to the next level. So thank you for all these.
And there's something about, being authentic by saying I love you is like, it falls short for me. It's like it has the quality of smearing over what's really the necessity. So that going to the point, at the core of it. And also messages are just really, they are gremlin food, like written messages or even voice messages. Like the only way to be really in authentic connection is by calling people up and telling that in person, and that's the more dangerous path, or the more scary path.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that brings me to this other point of the person that I've been coaching someone that has this box warfare with their former partner, and now it's about the assets and childcare, and there's a part of my client that just loves, it's really hard for her to let go of the conflict, to let go of so the gremlin really doesn't want things to change. So that is an interesting part to work with, is what is actually your part in the conflict, and how does your gremlin not want that conflict to go away? Because you might actually not know what's possible in authentic relating with another human being if you don't have a conflict. It's like needing a problem to be able to relate to someone. So if all of a sudden the bad guy is out of the picture because you choose that there's no bad guy, like who are you then? If there's no enemy, you can't go back to fighting. What then? And that brings us maybe to the next, where what is it really at the bottom of a conflict? I mean, a conflict requires human beings with boxes and gremlins. Well, we've looked at it as, there's actually, you can also have a conflict with yourself. So then different parts of yourself can be at war with each other. Your gremlin can beat yourself up, and then you have sort of a conflict inside of you. You can also be in conflict with the universe, and that all takes place inside of yourself. But when we go to the constellation that's of interest for me in mediation, is between at least two human beings, or at least two boxes. Then the question is, what's at the core of it? What's really at the core of, so gremlins fighting, what do gremlins protect? So I'd like to invite you to look at one situation where you get stuck with your conflict, or where you have, maybe Michelle, you can also take your clients, but one situation, just think of one situation where you get stuck with the conflict, where you find it really hard to let go of the conflict. It could also be when you're holding space and someone else struggles.
Julia, can you ask that one more time?
Yeah, so what is one situation where you find it really hard, if you're party to a conflict, to let go of the conflict? So you get stuck, basically. Part of you wants out of the conflict, but there's a part that doesn't allow that, your gremlin. And so one situation where you get stuck in a conflict.
So I could share. I've been working with a husband and wife. They've been married for many, many years, probably 30 years. And in those mediations, I think we've done 3 so far. And what I notice in those mediations is that during the mediation, they really do great because they really get it. They love each other, right? They love their children. There's a lot of that. And then what I see, and of course, yeah. So what I see is then I'll have calls with each of them individually, and they get stuck in the I'm better competition. So for them, one of their biggest things that I see in that particular conflict where they go back to that and back to that is I'm better than she is. And then she's better than he is, right? So he's more resourceful and can make more money, and right, and she has more common sense, and their son doesn't like him, and then he tells me, well, they're anyway. So they feed off that, and then when I confront these 2 individual stories and I confront them with their stories straight up, then they're both recognizing and wanting to work on it, and it does get better, right? So it's been 3 times. So I think what I want to say is they're so enmeshed in that I have a sense that it's going to take quite a bit of that mediation work, because it's how they roll. They've been rolling like this for many, many years in unconscious conflict, let's say, also.
I want to take that one step further, just sort of feeling into or thinking about what happens to me. And again, what I got was the bit that I get stuck on is when my child becomes really activated. I seem to get really stuck. And this is something that has been alive in me over the last couple of days. My child has got, it's like my child can't let it go. It has it in a tantrum. And I have a lot more space around that now. So it doesn't, the gremlin doesn't lash out so much anymore to protect that. So my work has been around really healing childhood, doing EHPs on, how, and becoming unhookable for me has been really valuable, learning. And I mean, I got hooked the other day, and I didn't get hooked in the moment. I got hooked later because my gremlin starts talking to me in my head. And this is the child thing. So yeah, for me, it's my child.
Thank you. So yes, both of that shows, the importance of healing processes alongside mediation, because it's in like 3-phase mediation actually doesn't work if you have a 2-hour session and then you think, okay, now then the fantasy that now we have peace. No, it's a gateway. It's truce. The truce that is, it's a gateway in the session, but also a gateway for the evolution of every party involved from that point on. So that requires a commitment to emotional healing processes, to adulthood initiations, because otherwise you stay in this childhood warfare, like in a sandpit, like this is my castle, or I'm going to destroy your castle, but now whatever, these child games that play out in our adult life if we're not initiated adults. Yeah.
And I want to add that it's not just like I have child and I have a bit of gremlin, and I notice in the other there is parent, gremlin and child, and each affect in different ways. So it's not just child, it's all of those things. And I've also noticed having sessions, I have lots of sessions with my partner and we're great at them at the time, and we go out and it just goes back to normal. And so what you've said, is it Michelle? Yeah. And without that, without the support of those EHPs, I don't believe anything will change.
Yeah.
Yeah, EHPs and coaching sessions. I think
Yeah,
it's
and coaching.
beyond just because EHPs are great, but to rely on the healing and not implementing another practice. I'm trying to say is no, it's this building mass. Yeah.
I have a big yes for the demeshment process. That's supporting me really well. Something that I'm doing, and it's supporting myself in the relationship. I think I can see my shifts, I can feel my shifts, and I'm catching stuff more. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Benedict, it looks like you're about to say something.
No, I was actually somewhere else in my head. Thank you.
Okay, come back. Welcome. Teresa, anything from you about a situation in conflict that you get stuck or where you notice people get stuck?
There are a few situations, and one from today where I had a box warfare with my grandmother, and I was so much triggered that I couldn't go out. I wanted to stay there. I wanted to continue it, even if I know that she's just overwhelmed and sad and makes no sense. And
Okay, so, yeah, what is underneath that? What's feeling?
it's this feeling of it's not a feeling, it's this thing of I don't worth it.
You're not worth it?
Yeah.
You don't. What do you mean with you don't worth it? Like, or you don't value it, or?
In the situation, it was like I fight for that I worth it and that I have a value, and I stay there and fight, but it was not really, I didn't make a connection to her. My gremlin wanted to stay in the situation.
So what feeling is under I'm not worth it, or I need to make sure that she knows that I'm worth something or that I'm valuable? What's the feeling underneath that? Or emotion?
Yeah, it's definitely child, but I don't know, maybe fear. I cannot feel it really. It's sadness. It's sadness of not being seen.
Sadness of not being seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great key. You know, that might be on the top, and then there could well be a fear underneath it. What if she doesn't see you? Who are you then? Or
yeah.
And sounded also earlier to me like there was some anger in there as well. And maybe the anger is on the very top to fight. Underneath is the sadness, and underneath that is the fear. It's like a sandwich.
Mm-hmm. Mm. Yeah. Yeah, true. Anger also.
Thank you. Yeah. So that at the end of the day, it comes back to there's an emotion or a feeling, usually an emotion in the box warfare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but is it not? How do you experience it? Because I feel like always when I'm in a box warfare, it's out of an emotion. It's not like a game or something. I'm really into it in this moment.
Yeah, you can't really get out because you're hooked or because
Yeah.
And it's such an old pattern it's such an old pattern. The example that you gave, to need approval from the parents or grandparents, but from these authority figures, to have them see you, to have them approve. and to get love, basically to justify your existence because there's someone that loves you. And that sounds a bit similar to what you described at the beginning, Benedict, about, you know, in the way of relating. Then this, it's a very common yeah, it's very common, because as children, that's actually accurate. You know, you need your parents' love so that you can survive, because as a human being, we're in a very long phase of not actually being able to survive as creatures without parents or adults looking after us. So yeah, maybe bringing that in here, that box, your box fighting, you could start on that premise, and also working with clients, that it's not bad, really. It's not bad. Your box is actually triggered and fighting because there's something to fight for. Otherwise, it wouldn't be fighting. So there's something to fight for. And the gremlin kicks in and really fights.
And
it fights
really
for
fighting
something.
for your survival.
Yeah. Yeah, fighting for your survival. Say more, Julyan.
No, it's just, there's this sense of appreciation or something of this part of you is doing it for a reason. Realizing that it's doing it for a reason means that you don't need to be in this good bad thing about it, which is just your gremlin anyway, judging where you are. And it can just be this signal. One thing I was thinking of, seeing conflict as this signal, is a signal that there's something going on that you need to look at, and a signal that some evolution is possible, and that there's a door that is right there that you can go through. And from your sharings, I was really getting the sense of the opportunity of conflict for bringing these things up, bringing up the coaching work that you've got to do, and bringing up the emotions. And it's Echo is putting us in these conflicts for a reason, for our evolution, so this stuff comes to the surface, so that we're confronted and become the next versions of ourselves.
Echo being the Earth Coincidence Control Office. Yeah.
I want to share my journey where I am with the relationship with my parents. So I started this work like 2 years ago, and at the beginning, until the first 1.5 years mainly, it was me seeing their patterns and me becoming more and more conscious of our relationships and how it works, and also my parents together, how they have their patterns. And I was really frustrated about it, and I just somehow cut it off connection, or was in low drama about it. Like, you're not seeing it. Your relationship could be so much greater, and see what you're doing. And this was mainly in my head. I just even didn't bring it into the space. And now it shifted since half a year or something, that I become more and more okay with it, that it's their boxes behavior, and that they learned this, how to survive and how to be in a relationship their whole life. And I become more and more into relationship with them, and being okay and being in love with how it is right now. And then the next door seems already shiny in front of me, where I also get then into creating new things, and from this position of love, and seeing that this is okay where they are, that this is how they survived until now, then creating something new. And this is, I still stand in front of the door, and there's a lot of fear about it, but yeah, this is also, maybe you can find yourself somewhere at that journey, and this is where I am.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. It brings up for me this this thing that you can choose to have a box-to-box conversation. You can choose to have a box-to-box war, or you can choose to have a box-to-being conversation, or being to box in that case. You know, you can choose that your being talks to the box, or you can even choose to have a being-to-being conversation or to navigate there. No matter what their box offers you, you choose to speak to their being. That's what I hear from what you said, Benedict.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find your words, they expand my box or my how I would formulate it. So thank you. Yes, very more clarity now.
So the way that goes is you can shrink, you can shrink your box. Let's do that together now, just as a little, not just as a little practice. You can, so look at the screen and look at the boxes. There's 6 boxes in the space. We don't have to pretend we don't have boxes. Okay, it's okay to have a box. It's great. It's made sure we survived, and you may even find yourself in a not so much defensive box state, but that your box is actually an expansive. What happens after you've gone through some initiations. So center yourself and ground yourselves. Centering with bringing your attention with your intention to your physical center, just 2 fingers beneath your belly button. And letting the energy move there in your physical center. There's a dense energy ball in your physical center now. And then clearing your grounding cord with your clicker. Please, at the count of 3, say the color. 1, 2, 3. Green,
Blue.
gold. And then also click your personal bubble of space. And now take your own box. So look at all of us, all these boxes on the screen. There's boxes. You can see them with your box. And then you click and you declare with this clicking that your box sits on the palm of your hand in a 10 to 10 centimeter cube. So just do that together. Let's do that together. So now with your being, you can look at the boxes with your being to start with. But now actually, because there's no boxes, look at the being from your being. And your being has feelings, your being has feelings. You can really let yourself feel what you feel. Thank you. So you can do that anytime. You can click your box into the size of 10 centimeters into the palm of your hands or onto the top of your knee. You have that power to change any relationship like that by changing your relating to the other person. Is there do you notice any difference when you do that?
I notice that my heart is a lot more open. And it's like I look with love.
You look with love.
I noticed that I can feel the single feelings and not just a construct or something. And that I can go with it in connection.
Thank you.
I had this sense of really being in my eyes, looking at the other person, looking at you.
Sense of being in your eyes. Can you say more about that?
Just that I was really looking, not just glancing over people.
Now really looking is landing for me, and so first seconds I realized how myself, my own being, and I also looked at it and was pretty amazed. And then also seeing you and feeling that there's way more, or that there's this connection possible. And yeah, that there are 5 other beings seeking something similar that I'm seeking.
I noticed myself noticing the feelings when I was focusing on each one of you beings, and the feelings that were coming through me and how they were kind of same and also different somehow, depending on who I was with at that moment. And it was sharper somehow than other times. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I noticed mainly my sadness, like this really relaxation sadness of, I'm in a space with you and you're here and I'm here, and yeah, I'm touched by the beauty of each one of you and the beauty of the connection. And then immediately to my voice came in. It's like, okay, and driven by fear, like what's next? How could I make this even more impactful? And listening to that and just letting it be in the background, so not actually listening to it and just staying in the experience. I think that's a really common thing, having an experience and immediately there's an offer to get out of the experience, an internal offer, a voice that wants to go to the next thing. And essentially the offer is to get out of the moment and go to the next thing rather than staying there.
May I say, are you done?
Yes, go.
Thank you. Yeah, what came to me now regarding what you just said, and maybe together we can find this connection to conflict. Very interesting is that voice, that offer of what's the next thing. I know that voice very well in the sense of I don't have value if I don't do, right? So I've worked very hard on, see, I feel this sadness now here, right? I want to say I've done many emotional healing processes and other type of deeper work regarding what is this about me and doing. And so what you just explained, I immediately went to, yeah, wow, that's the offer of let's do something. And so I wonder, and I'm kind of opening it up to all of us, and I wonder how that internal conflict of you don't have value if you don't do. And I wonder how we can navigate that space together, in that, how can I be more with me without doing? And I feel like I do feel really happy, glad, proud that I've made a lot of steps towards that. And I also notice that I can go back to that pattern. So especially if somebody's asking, you know, hey, do you want to do this project? And then you go back to doing. Anyway, I don't know if anyone else resonates with that internal conflict of, I don't have value if I don't do, something like that.
Yeah, please show hands if you do resonate.
Does anyone else resonate with that? Yeah.
Yeah, so everyone here. Anything else would have come as a super surprise to me, because we all grew up in, or all were raised in and live in patriarchy. Most of us still do. And patriarchy is that, right? It's about doing, and then you're valuable in society. So how does that relate to conflict? What does that have to do with conflict?
For me, it's I'll just share that what came to me and why I wanted to open up to everyone, because is that it's an internal conflict that I've been with since I can remember, and then became this major habit, and then workaholism, let's say, right, etc. And yeah, all of that.
Yes. Yeah, there's something really valuable in there, that, and it relates back to what you shared, Teresa. I want to be seen. I want to be valued. Yeah. And I don't have this internal conflict that if I don't do, then I don't have value. Or if the other doesn't see my value, then I'm nothing, or I'm not. And this internal conflict is actually a feeling, it's my sense or an emotion. There's fear. There's fear. There's fear. Yeah. It comes back to fear that if I don't do, I don't have value.
I won't be seen, loved, I'll disappear. I don't exist.
I don't exist, and I'll die. Yeah, I'll die.
I'm invisible. And so what just came to me to ask you guys, Julyan and Julia, is, can we utilize the phases? What are the phases that you guys have been discovering? And can we use those phases to kind of tackle this, something like that? Because I wasn't clear on the phases, by the way. I also wanted more clarity around that.
The phases.
There's more in there too. I mean, I have this thing where it's kind of what we've been talking about. I have this thing of being, I'm nothing and I'm just not worth it. And why, I guess there's this other part of me is, why would anyone be bothered taking their time?
Why would anyone bother taking their time?
For me, with me.
Yeah.
Because I'm just, I'm not worthy and I'm nothing.
Yeah, so you're bringing in another thing, which I think is a common meme, is this time thing, that the doing and the time goes together somehow. You cannot take, I guess, yeah.
Everyone else is doing, therefore they don't have time for me. And I'm not doing, so both pile up.
Yeah.
And what comes there for me is, when I'm not doing and when nobody has time for me, then I am alone.
Yeah.
And yeah, this for me is also a situation where I'm struggling since a few months, that being alone, a lot of comes up, and
And I would add on to that again, because I had the same thing. I would add on, it's not worth it. Why do anything?
comes, yeah, and it seems to come back to the same root as this. Well, I'm not worth it is actually, it sounds to me more driven by an emotion of anger. But it's this tantrum anger of a child, right? It's this, and underneath, I have the assumption, or this, the hypothesis that at the basis is again fear, most likely. This fear of not being worth it, this fear of not being loved.
Yeah, definitely fear of not being loved. Yeah.
And I mean, gremlin is often really driven by fears, by unconscious fears. I mean, in the drama triangle, there's all unconscious feelings are gremlin drivers, because the gremlin in the middle gets joy from things not changing. But I'm getting this sense of, in conflict, there's at the root of a conflict, be it with yourself internally or with others, be really, let's play with that. It's okay. Let's say there's fear at the basis of it, unconscious emotional fear. So then, okay, looking at the phases of conflict or conflict transformation. So phase one is to identify there is a conflict and to notice, okay, there's what really is the conflict about? What is it? It's this. Gaining clarity.
Yeah. So if we're speaking about this example, right? So identifying the conflict is I am alone, or I am not loved, or I'm kind of, does that make sense?
I think the conflict would be more this, what you said, my internal conflict is if I don't do anything, I'm not loved.
I'm not worthy.
I'm not worthy.
Loved.
I'm not valuable. I'm not a valuable member of society, and then I might as well die. You know, it's not. So I need to do something so that I'm valuable. And then doing something can actually create the conflict, because then you're in doing mode from an inauthentic place.
Yeah, very good point.
So you're trying to do something, and you have the justification that then you should be valuable. So here comes the expectation that if you do something that you think increase your value, then the other should love you or see you or give you value you.
Something just
go ahead.
Something just came up for me then around expectations too. So if you've got conflict and this is the driver at the bottom, and then if you're not getting this met, say with somebody else, there's these expectations from this fear of not being loved or whatever it is, and then this is almost fuel for this war that happens.
Yeah, expectations are totally fuel for the war that happens. And it's this unconscious, and unconsciousness is really the fuel for it. Unconsciousness of the fear to start with. So you had consciousness that you're actually scared, then you wouldn't have to go into the doing. You could say, wow, I feel scared that if, say in an intimate relationship, you could say, instead of trying to please the other by doing, you could say, I feel fear that if I don't do the shopping or if I don't cook tonight, that you won't love me. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but this, or also in a work relationship, I feel fear that if I don't do the job in time, I'm going to be, you're going to terminate my agreement. When really from your being, the impulse might be something totally different. And I'm not talking about falling asleep and not doing anything, but trusting this inner integrity that maybe you have something so much more valuable that you could, that needs to come through you in this very moment, that you could do that, or you could be and then come from that. Example. So if there's expectations in a relationship that you like every day you swap who does the dishes or something, you have this unspoken agreement that if someone has cooked one evening, the other has to cook the other evening. Or yeah, so that's an intimate relationship. Let's stay with this for a start. What happens if you don't play that game? If you don't let your fear that they might not love you, if you don't stick to this unspoken agreement, then yeah, I guess the consciousness really allows you to make different offers. And we're coming back to the conscious anger. You need the conscious anger to be able to do that, not the gremlin anger that says, that has resentment that someone else might have an expectation. You know, that the world expects a good citizen. The world, I mean, really, it's a very big abstract generalization, because there is not such one entity as the world. Let's say everybody in the world has an expectation that you have to do something to make your life worthwhile. You need to be successful in some way or whatever. And then you can be mad at everybody else having that expectation. So you're using your anger to be angry at people for having, so it's a low drama game. You're persecuting the others. So the way out of low drama is to honoring, to take responsibility for your feelings and the emotions, like healing the emotions. But something that the conscious anger that allows to do that also allows you to make radical proposals and to be, this clarity comes back to me. So I'm trying to come back to the conflict issue, but what you said, Joe, this with the expectation, something around the expectation. So you can use your conscious anger to actually say, I notice you have an expectation. What is your expectation? Clarify that. And then you can say, well, I want something different. Can we negotiate something different? So you're pulling the rug out of the conflict, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And I had this really great conversation with a guy about integrity. And you know, some of you might have seen the video of that interview. I highly recommend it because it keeps popping up in me. It really works in me still. And this thing about integrity serving, actually, that you can also take, like, integrity is also about managing or handling other people's expectations. So you notice there's an expectation. And so from a clean PM perspective that my box took on, I'd say, okay, well, their problem. They have an expectation, their problem. I'm just not going to entertain it. So the next level up is when I notice the expectation, and that is actually the next level up to higher levels of responsibility, is to name it. It's like, I notice there's an expectation. Instead of saying internally, fuck you, you have an expectation, not my problem. I can go and say, I notice you have this expectation, or what is your expectation? And then I can take a position, or I can say what I'm going to do or what I'm not going to do. So I can keep the space clean. And that is really, we're pretty much on one side of the conflict. Yeah, I guess if we're looking at it from phases of conflict, one is to identify what is really at the, what is it? What is the conflict? What is the core of it? Julyan, what do you have next? What's the next line in the script?
What I'd actually really like to know is, what are the three phases of conflict? Because you've been talking about them, but I don't know what they are.
Yeah, we're just
I can say more about that. So in the two-phase conflict, you've got phase one, which is you're swimming along fine and you don't have any conflict in your life. And phase two is a conflict comes along and everything falls apart. And then the mediator comes, and their job is to take you back to phase one, when everything's swimming along fine, the kind of peace that Julia was talking about. But in this 3 phase, there's a 3rd phase, which is taking you to a new version of yourself. It's taking you away from the conflict rather than the conflict away from you. And it's an initiation. The conflict is here to allow you to take more responsibility for your life.
Thank you. I really like that.
Can you repeat that? The conflict is?
It's here for your evolution, for you to take more responsibility. One of the things I really liked from Julia's interview about integrity was that integrity is about when something isn't working. And a conflict is showing you that something isn't working. It's this signal in your life, in your space. It's like a beep, beep, beep on the dialometer. Something's not working. And if you're in integrity, then you go inside of yourself and ask, how did I create this? And going inside and asking, how did I create this, leads to the doorway to you being a new person who then doesn't get in that conflict anymore. Because maybe you've done the coaching to express your anger and to negotiate. And now the same situations come along and there's no conflict. You've taken yourself out of the conflict. You haven't just gone back to the conditions that you're in before.
And that's where mediation sessions can really support each individual in taking themselves out of the conflict. And that might be a different journey it will be a different journey for each one of them, because you come, like every person comes with a different baseline or different necessities for evolution. And the joint trigger or the joint indicator for evolution is the conflict between those two people or more people.
Or within ourselves. Something that showed up for me when Julyan was sharing is, so in some of the work that I've done with people, right, with 2 people, is somehow the space opening up, inviting the bright principles in the space, and for the most part, like compassion, empathy will show up, and they therefore they can. I'm not speaking, so they can, have compassion as to where that person is coming from, like the fear, etc., or whatever it is that is showing up as conflict, and that shows up. And what showed up right now for me is in this conflict, this internal conflict of I do, how can I have more self-compassion, more empathy towards myself, in that not only having the awareness, the identifying the conflict, which, by the way, I have identified many years ago, right? It's not new, and probably for many of us, and taking it now to the next step, which in mediation and in others is, how can the bright principle of self-compassion, self-empathy also assist in that internal conflict, be it what it may, and same with others. So it's not only about, so this is kind of my question. It's, yes, the radical responsibility around me, and in connection, a bright principle of empathy and compassion also in my experience, is there, is a necessity and is invited somehow.
Yeah, thank you. And that I see there the link to the truce. Like the compassion is actually a doorway, because it's clearing the path that your evolution can happen. Because if you're trying to evolve from a place, again, from you know, you have, if you have this conditioning that you have to do in order to be valuable, and then you notice that, and then you can try to do something different so that you're then transforming that mechanism. Something about the compassion, love, self-love, it's like it's medicine really to open the door so that you can heal, transform from that. And it's like a doorway. It's the like, that is the like part of the truce part, so that something else can happen, healing or evolution, like, can actually happen, because you need that door opening first. You need the doorway.
Yeah, thank you. And in fact, that is kind of what I've witnessed. So once that compassion and all of that, then the energy, the connection, just right in the two, let's say humans, people, and now it opens all of the other possibilities and agreements and offers and all of that. So thank you for that distinction as well. Yeah, the truce.
Truce.
My experience is that empathy for the other really creates this sense of like shared humanity, where you stop seeing the other person through your stories. When you've been in the conflict with them, you've just seen them through the lens of all of these stories, all of your gremlin stories about who they are. And the compassion can come in to be, oh, I'm actually with another human being who's this whole miraculous mystery.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of an awe, right? I mean, what I had the sense that what you shared now, Julyan, it's like this awe, right? This, wow, there's that other being. And wow, and curiosity, like, I wonder what it's really like being that. And that is also possible in a mediation, even with 30 years of marriage. I think that's just came to me, this, it's opening up that possibility of this awness. Wow, thank you.
Huh. It could have been 20 years in the story of, oh, my husband is a lazy, or he never does this thing, and living in that. And then suddenly the curtains are pulled back and they're with a real human being again.
Yeah, my sense is you took something that we have been working on, on our own and with this couple, let's say, compassion, empathy, and you took it to another level, which has to do with what is your human experience like, really? It's almost like deeper somehow. Go ahead. Mm-hmm.
That brings me back to what Julyan said earlier about this vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that, from that place, you can have authentic vacuum questions. Really wanting to know, what is this experience like for you? This experience of being in a human body, in a human existence with all these, what does your landscape look like, and how does that go for you?
About having curiosity, and the way I would say for myself is, it's like looking with amazement. So having curiosity and looking with amazement.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So just to be clear, the phases are identify and end. Were those the phases? Or did you mention them and I missed them?
So the phases are, Julyan just summarized it beautifully. It's like, you're fine. Phase 1 is you're fine, you don't have a conflict. So at least that's where we're at now with our research. Okay. And if you find out something different, let us know.
Mm-hmm.
So let's refine it. But it's this phase 1 is, this peace. Let's say peace, or there's no conflict, or there's some issues, but let's not address them because let's just be in peace and harmony and love each other. And then the conflict comes, phase 2. Here's the actual conflict emerges to the surface. And in a 2-phase approach, at that stage, you try to address the conflict so that you can go back to phase 1.
Mm-hmm.
There's no conflict, we have peace.
I was just going to say a little thing.
Go.
You can see all of modern culture's approaches as being this 2-phase thing. For example, a prison is trying to deal with the conflict in society, and it tries to do it by getting rid of it, by taking things back to how they were before. It's not opening up an evolutionary opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Go for the 3 phases, Julia.
Yeah, and then phase 3 would be, if we don't do that, we, instead of trying to navigate back to the original state, the 3rd phase would be to use the conflict as fuel for evolution, for right principles, for something to change your own shape. So the shape of the parties involved, to change their shape so that they withdraw themselves from the conflict, because the conflict can't attach to them anymore. The triggers are gone. The beliefs have changed. You've changed your stories about something. So, you know, if I've changed my story from I'm not valuable if I don't do anything to I am, or I am a human being living and exploring how human relationships go, or that you're a different identity. You're the conflict, this offer of you should do something, otherwise you're not valuable. It just doesn't stick. So that conflict cannot no longer arise with you. There's the conflict needs how do you call this? Reibefläche, Reibungsfläche, an area of heat. You know, this rubbing against each friction. Yeah, friction. Conflict needs friction. So basically, in the 3 phase, you take the friction. There's no friction because there's nothing for it to attach to.
Thank you. And for me, in my this conflict that we were speaking about, my internal conflict of if I don't have value, I'm worthless, etc. I'm invisible, like all of that I've worked for many years around. It is true that once I identified it, right, and worked through emotional healing processes, through sharing like I am now, through like that, in coaching others also, there's a lot of work when I coach others about that in them, because it's a recurring story and all of that, that now it is, it doesn't stick anymore. Like I can be and be okay with being, but not all the time. And when I am, I'm like, I actually have awareness around it. I'm like, oh, wow, I was just there, you know, and happy to be there. Somehow like something like that. Do you see? Something like that. And amazing things happen. Yeah. So
amazing things happen. Can you say more about that?
Yeah, I have an example, a quick one. I know we only have a minute. Is that okay if I take a minute?
We have 5 minutes, so go ahead. Oh,
we do? Oh, okay. Thank you. So I went to this place for breakfast, and I took my notebook and I sat and I wanted to sit, have breakfast, listen to somebody that was singing at this breakfast place and write. That's what I wanted to do. That was my plan. And I sat in this place and I really, like magic, this lady that was sitting next to me, this was last week, sat in front of me like a magnet. So I was just being, I just wanted to be and write. And this lady, and the magic was that this lady had just come with the ashes of her husband who passed 5 months ago. And she had traveled to Mexico to, farewell to her husband's ashes. And we ended up doing 2 emotional healing processes, getting her a boat, sharing that experience with her of the ashes of John, did massive work. By the time she went to do the ashes, it was a celebration.
Wow.
That just happened this week.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing.
And thank you. And I had not made the connection, which I'm grateful for right now, is that I really wanted to sit there and just be.
Yeah.
Just be a human.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to be more of that. I want us all to be more of that.
Yeah.
Ooh. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Beautiful.
you, Michelle, for that. That's really beautiful wrap up, because it brings us back to the start of like what I see and hear is that, you know, the truce that you've created in yourself was the doorway for this being and your bright principles coming through in this connection.
Yes. I'll share with Julyan, if that's okay, the photo of this gentleman who passed. It made it so real, you know.
Mm.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
The truth.
Yeah, I'm getting how, you know, that then mediation becomes really a doorway for human to human being connections, and that leads us off the beaten track into real these magical moments, into magic. Yeah, it's time to wrap up. Thank you so much for showing up and bringing your authentic questions and your curiosities and your experiences. And I'm not sure whether you can see the chats that we did before you entered, probably not. Then I'm just gonna,
I can do it.
I've got it here. So 3 links for you that you may want to copy. You've got Julyan's newsletter, my newsletter, and the possibility mediation website. Yeah, I have this impulse of creating, creating the pool for mediators, people that are interested in mediation in one way or the other. So we might, yeah, if you, does anyone have an objection to be part of that pool?
I'm interested.
You want to be in? Okay, cool. Anybody not want to be in?
I would like to have a conversation about that with
Cool.
with you and Julyan, or whatever, Julyan. Yes.
Yes, great. Glad. Let's do that.
I didn't get it.
Okay, so like, do you want to be updated or be part of a possibility mediation pool in whichever way that goes? So it could be a Telegram group, could be a mailing list to keep you updated with possibility mediation offers and like work talks, like the training that we're setting up, like mediation sessions. We'll be offering 50 free mediation sessions.
I'm in.
Yeah.
Right.
And rather Telegram than mail.
Okay, thank you.
For me,
I'm also interested in holding space for that, Julia.
Mm-hmm.
I'm leaving on time. Thank you for the space.
Thank you, Benedict.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Benedict.
Thank you, everyone.
Benedict.
Yes, I'm gonna.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Julia,